A team ranked 10th in the world just lost to a team ranked 41st. 4 World Cups, 4 stars on the shirt, 90 years of history, gone in a shootout that should never have happened. And the question nobody in football wants to answer is simple. If this can happen to Germany, who's actually safe anymore? Stay with this, because Germany was only the first name to fall. Hit subscribe. It gets worse from here. Here's the question that should worry every football federation on earth. How did 1 week, in one expanded tournament, tear apart a hierarchy that had survived for almost a century? This question has layers, and each one gets darker. What actually happened inside these matches? Why now, after decades of near misses that never quite broke through? Who saw it coming? And who was blindsided live in front of a global audience? And here's the question that should worry the Giants most. Once a hierarchy this old cracks, does it ever hold again? To answer that, we don't start with a giant. We start with a single number that quietly rewired the entire tournament. 48. For the first time in history, the World Cup expanded to 48 teams. A brand new round was born. The round of 32, a stage that had never existed before in 96 years of this tournament. More nations qualified than ever. More paths open for teams that used to just watch from home. On paper, it looked like a bigger party. In practice, it was a loaded gun pointed at the old guard, and nobody realized it until the trigger got pulled. Every extra slot at this World Cup used to belong, unofficially, to the Giants. Now belonged to someone else, a team with nothing to lose, and for the first time, a real stage to lose it on. Nobody in the sport's old guard had faced pressure quite like that before. They were about to find out exactly what it does to a favorite. The first tremors were easy to miss, but they weren't nothing. Canada edged South Africa 1-0. Brazil needed a nervy 2-1 win to shake off a fearless Japan. Norway rode Erling Haaland past Ivory Coast 2-1. France cruised past Sweden 3-0, a scoreline that looked for a moment like proof the old order was still intact. Mexico beat Ecuador 2-0. 5 results, 5 Giants still standing. What none of them knew yet was that the ground was already shifting beneath them. Then the pattern started accelerating. Fast. A small result becomes a shaken federation. A shaken federation becomes a shockwave. And within 48 hours, this tournament would produce the kind of results football historians don't forget for decades. Once you see that shape building, you can't look away from it. So what actually happened to Germany? A 4-time champion nobody expected to be here this soon. On paper, this should never have been close. Germany came in ranked 10th in the world. Paraguay came in ranked 41st, a team that had never once won a World Cup knockout match by scoring a goal. The Germans controlled roughly 3/4 of the ball. They pressed, they probed, and for the first half, almost none of it mattered. Here's the unsettling part. Paraguay never tried to beat Germany at their own game. They refused to play it at all, surrendering the ball, holding their shape, waiting for frustration to do the damage tactics couldn't. It worked, and every underdog left in this tournament was about to copy it. Julio Enciso headed Paraguay in front just before the break, punishing a sluggish German start nobody inside the camp could explain. Kai Havertz leveled it early in the second half, and for a moment, the story looked like it would write itself. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. Jonathan Tah headed home in extra time, and VAR ripped it away. No goal came after that. So it went to penalties, a place Germany had never lost at a World Cup. Not once, not in 4 previous shootouts. But history is only a shield until the moment it isn't. Havertz missed. Wolt made missed. Tah put his effort over the bar. And when Jose Canale stepped up for Paraguay, the shield finally cracked. Germany's exit sent a message to every giant left in the draw. No one is safe. And the next 24 hours wouldn't just confirm that warning. They'd turn it into a preview of something much bigger. So is Germany a freak result? Or the first crack in something far bigger? To answer that, you have to look one stadium and one country over. In Monterrey, the Netherlands were 90 seconds from safety. Cody Gakpo had scored in a raw, emotional moment just days after he and his partner had announced the loss of their unborn child. Then, in the first minute of stoppage time, Morocco's Issa Diop rose to head home an equalizer that changed everything. Extra time solved nothing. It came down to penalties again, and again, the bigger name went home. Morocco's Yassine Bounou made the decisive save before Ismail Saibari calmly finished it. Two heavyweights, gone in the same round, on the same day, in almost the same manner. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns raise a question nobody wanted to ask yet. Which giant falls next? Two shockwaves, same shoreline, hours apart. Analysts stopped calling it upset. They started calling it a changing of the guard. And every giant still left in the draw had to ask themselves the same uncomfortable question. Are we actually good? Or have we simply not been tested yet? Belgium were about to find out the hard way. And how they answer that question produced the most dramatic 90 minutes of the entire round. Senegal built a 2-goal lead, playing with a fearlessness that said they'd already stopped believing in Belgium's reputation. For long stretches, it looked like the biggest shock of the tournament was happening in real time. But football has a habit of rewarding the team that refuses to accept the story being written about them. Belgium's substitutions changed the rhythm completely. The comeback built goal by goal until extra time arrived, locked at 2-2. Then came the latest decisive goal ever recorded at a World Cup. A penalty awarded after a lengthy VAR review, buried by Yuri Tielemans in the closing seconds. Senegal's manager had nothing to say afterward. Belgium survived. But surviving isn't the same as being safe, and everyone inside that stadium knew exactly how close the old order had come to losing a third giant in one night. One match had just become a warning for an entire sport, because what happened next didn't stay inside that stadium. It reached federations, it reached broadcasters, it reached every analyst trying to explain what was actually going on. By the time the dust settled on Belgium's escape, football writers everywhere were asking the same unsettling question. Is this tournament actively punishing complacency? 48 teams, a round that never used to exist. The theory taking hold was blunt. The bigger this tournament gets, the smaller the gap between giant and underdog becomes. Not everyone accepted it quietly either, because that late penalty raised a question football doesn't like to ask out loud. Did the officials just become part of the story? Senegal's camp went silent after that call, and silence, in football, is rarely neutral. It's the sound of a team that knows the moment's been taken out of their hands. Was it the right decision, or a stage that had already decided to protect its biggest remaining names? Fans will argue about it for years. What's harder to argue with is the pattern underneath it. Every one of these matches came down to a single kick. The fallout in Germany went far beyond football analysis. The head coach admitted, in front of the cameras, that serious change was needed, and that he'd stay only if the federation wanted him to. German broadcasters called it a national embarrassment, a four-time champion publicly unraveling in real time for the entire world to watch. And it raised a question no one inside that federation wanted to answer yet. Could this actually happen again? Deeper in the tournament? To teams even bigger than these? Look at what all four results share. Germany dominated the ball and still lost. The Netherlands controlled long stretches and still lost. Belgium needed a miracle just to survive. England would need something even rarer. For federations, for continents, one unsettling thread. Not a single major outlet predicted any of it. If that gap can vanish in the round of 32, nothing says it can't vanish again in the final itself. One result was still left to prove the theory beyond doubt. It was about to happen to the team everyone assumed was safe. England should have been the safe story of the round. Instead, they conceded inside the first 10 minutes to DR Congo, a nation playing its first ever World Cup knockout match. For over an hour, England couldn't find a way through. The clock kept ticking, and the story of a fourth giant falling kept threatening to right itself. Then, in the 75th minute, Harry Kane rose to head home an equalizer. His 12th World Cup goal, level with Pelé, a record that had stood since a different era of the sport entirely. 11 minutes later, Kane found space amid a crowd of defenders and drilled a finish into the top corner. 13 World Cup goals. No one had ever reached that number before. England survived 2-1, but the real story wasn't survival. It was how close they came to not surviving at all. And what that says about everyone still left in this tournament. Here's the answer, the one this entire story has been building toward. This wasn't a round of isolated upsets. It was the moment football's oldest hierarchy started cracking under the weight of its own expansion. Paraguay didn't get lucky against Germany. They were built tactically and mentally to survive exactly the kind of pressure for 120 relentless minutes. Morocco didn't get lucky against the Netherlands. They refused to be intimidated even after conceding what should have been a fatal blow. Senegal came within a single penalty kick of eliminating a third giant. And England needed history itself rewritten just to avoid becoming the fourth. None of that sounds like luck. It sounds like something has permanently changed. For traditional powers pushed to the very edge. Two of them didn't survive at all. 48 teams was supposed to dilute the bottom of this tournament. Instead, in its very first knockout round, it detonated the certainty at the top. And if this is what the round of 32 already looks like, no one yet knows what the final rounds are about to do to the teams that are left. The old hierarchy didn't collapse because the giants suddenly got worse. It collapsed because the tournament itself changed the rules. More opponents, more paths, more nations with nothing left to fear. Every single shock in this round came down to inches. Seconds. One kick from 12 yards. That's not weak giants. That's a sport where the floor has risen high enough to threaten the ceiling. But here's the question nobody can answer yet, the one that will define the rest of this tournament and everyone that follows it. If a team ranked 41st can eliminate a four-time champion, and a debutante nation can push England to the very brink, what happens when these same rising teams collide with the sport's true elite deep in the knockout rounds, with the trophy on the line and nowhere left to hide? The round of 32 didn't just eliminate teams. It exposed a truth football may not be ready to accept. The gap at the top of the game might already be gone, and nobody yet knows who's going to fill it.